Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Good evening to our viewers on TV1 and our listeners on Yes FM. Welcome to the Newsfirst newsroom. I'm Ramesh Irugal Bandara. Now, as the election draws closer, there is more talk about the bond scam. President Maithripala Sirisena, after he received the Bond Commission's report, made a special statement to the country and laid out the key points that have been mentioned in this extensive report. Afterwards, he went on to public rallies at a number of locations and said that he will punish those who are responsible, disregarding party or position. Now, these statements seem to have rattled some cages. Let's listen to what Minister Harin Fernando had to say at a recent rally in Vallavatta.
There are certain areas where we made mistakes. I'm not in favor of politics these days. The reason is because the person we elected has started to make various statements. I cannot accept those statements. At some places, the people have started to feel disgusted over this difference. Nimal Siripala or Susil Premajayantha did not work to elect Maithripala Sirisena as the president. We tussled, raised green flags across all Pradeshya Sabhas and worked hard to elect Maithripala Sirisena as the president. If one is to speak about the bond issue, we are the ones who exposed the rogues of the bond issue. We elected this president and brought in good governance. We introduced a system, that is why the Prime Minister provided evidence. We introduced a system where ministers were forced to resign. It is because of the system we introduced for the first time in history. 3 ministers were forced to resign from cabinet before the end of 2 years into power. Are we happy? Now they are crying thief. He is saying thief, the other is saying thief. They are having fun. At the conference, the Prime Minister said 11 billion rupees will be paid by Perpetual or any other entity after the court case. We have made a public statement that they will pay. To the people at Sirasa, we have said that they will pay. Did you see it? Did you? Then, this statement as well.
For the benefit of our Yes FM listeners, we report, you decide. That was Minister Harin Fernando expressing his views. Now, to the people making juvenile statements, this is simply what we have to say. Instead of speaking about working hard to bring someone into power and then questioning his actions, why didn't the UNP field their own candidate at the past 2 presidential elections? First it was Sarath Fonseka, then it was Maithripala Sirisena, most recently in 2015. Why didn't the UNP field their own UNP candidate? Was it because they were afraid of their past track record at national elections? Now, we know that Venerable Madhulave Sobitutero back in 2015 played a great role in bringing forward the debate about a common candidate and bringing forward a common candidate. But still, the UNP could have stuck to their guns and said, no, we want a common candidate who is a UNP member. Why did they have to wait for the Secretary General of the SLFP to come out and step in as the common candidate that they fielded for the 2nd presidential election in a row? Now, with regard to the statements made by Harin Fernando regarding the bond investigations, now, it is truly amusing that Minister Fernando thinks that the UNP led the investigations regarding the bond. Now, this is how we remember it, and I believe that the public remembers this as well. Initially, it was Newsfirst when this bond scam took place. We were the ones who came forward and said, look here, there is an issue here. Along with us, there were several print media organizations as well. This is how we remember what the UNP did. Before the president could take any action, it was Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe who appointed a commission, or rather a committee, to look into it. This is more commonly known as the Pitipana Committee. The Pitipana Committee had a report. What did they say in this report? They said, well, there seems to be nothing wrong, but investigations could take place further. Then, the Prime Minister, the leader of the UNP, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, went before Parliament on numerous occasions and tried to defend those who are involved in this. When this matter came forward to the COPE, what did they do? The United National Party put members into COPE and they tried to defend this. That is how we ended up with a COPE report with footnotes. We remember COPE members writing books about this bond as well. So is this how the United National Party led the Bond investigation? Also, we would like to remind you that eventually the president stepped in, appointed a presidential commission of inquiry. They inquired for about 10 months, and now there is a report on it. The recommendations of the report are being revealed to the public as we speak. Everything that happened has been laid bare. Keep this in mind that this is your money that has been stolen. I need to ask Minister Fernando, if a thief broke into your house, took all your valuables, and then 2 years later came back and said, you know, we profited off these valuable items, but now we don't need them anymore, you can keep it back. This is what he was referring to. This is similar to what he was saying regarding perpetual treasuries, giving back the money that was owed to them. Getting back the money is just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine if we followed Minister Fernando's recommendation about, you know, getting the money back, and that's the end of it. There will be long queues in front of police stations with criminals who are just about to be nabbed, saying, here's the stuff that we took, our hands are now clean, we are going to go off. If this is the example that we are going to follow, then this country, I don't know. Well, as I said, getting the money back is just the tip of the iceberg. What the people want, what the country wants, is action, is justice. Justice for the crime that was committed. Justice against, or action against, the people who committed these crimes. Just because the money is returned, the crime does not go away. Going back to my initial point about the election of President Maithripala Sirisena, Minister S.B. Disanayake had some words for Minister Fernando's statement. Let's hear what he had to say.
There is no point in saying that we didn't help him become president. It was not us. We worked against him. I would like to state one thing. It was because of us that the leader of the United National Party became the Prime Minister of the country. It was because of us that a number of UNP parliamentarians received ministerial portfolios and deputy ministerial portfolios. When Maithripala Sirisena won the election, we had 142 seats in parliament. The UNP only had 42. The SLFP was silent when the UNP, with just 42 seats, appointed the Prime Minister from the party and appointed ministers into the Cabinet of Ministers. The only reason the SLFP was silent was because Maithripala Sirisena took over the SLFP. The government wouldn't have moved forward. If Parliament was convened, we would have brought a no-confidence motion against them and chased them away. We were not having just 2 or 3 seats more, we had 100 seats more. They could build an argument to say that the Parliament could have been dissolved. What would happen if they dissolved Parliament? None of the promises given by the common candidate before the election would have been achieved. You needed a 2/3 majority to bring in the 19th Amendment and the amendments to the election system. None of this could have been done. The whole world was trying to attack us, to impose economic sanctions. They were trying to say that we were war criminals. When a government was established with these two parties together, when they went and spoke to the US, the EU, India and even Japan, they supported the president because of this great revolution in the country. Before the presidential election, the provincial council elections were held over the span of 1.5 years. When you take a look at the votes that the UNP received in these elections, it was 2.4 million votes. The UPFA had received 4.9 million votes. That was the base when we went into the presidential election. Few political parties in the alliance removed themselves and went and extended their support to the common candidate. You can analyze all of this. The details are not complicated. If you do these calculations in a way that is beneficial to them, let's think for a moment that these 4.9 million votes had reduced to 3.9 million votes when the presidential election was called. Let's reduce 1 million votes. Let's also think that since this was a government toppling election, the UNP increased its voter base by 1 million votes. That is how analysts do these estimations. Even by those standards, the UNP has 3.4 million votes and the UPFA had 3.9 million votes. But President Maithripala Sirisena received 6.2 million votes.
හැබැයි ලක්ෂ 62මාරක් ජනාධිපති මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මැතිතුමා ගන්නවා.
Now we have 2 more questions for Minister Fernando. They said that 11 billion would be returned to the government. Now does that mean that they accept that a crime has been committed? And also, just because they helped President Maithripala Sirisena come into power, does that give them the right to do anything they want? This is like jumping in to save a drowning man, saving him, and then saying, well, I saved your life, so you are my slave for the rest of your life. This is very similar to that. While debates are ranging about mega scams like the bond scam, there was a startling revelation made by a former minister. This is the revelation by parliamentarian Rohitha Abegunawardena.
When we start speaking about the bond scam, all the other small-time robberies are overlooked. The most serious one is the scam surrounding wheat flour. When wheat flour was imported to the country, a tax of 9 rupees was imposed per kilogram. Around 2 billion kilograms of wheat flour is imported annually. Then they removed this 9 rupee tax. Who does this? There is a committee that brings down prices when the people's cost of living rises. That ministerial committee calls for the removal of this 9 rupee tax. So when the tax is reduced, usually the price of bread and other products must reduce. Has the price of a loaf of bread reduced? The prices have increased. But there is an issue regarding the 9 rupee tax. The loss for 2 billion kilos following the removal of the 9 rupee tax is 18 billion rupees. So who took that money? The big thieves were speaking like gentlemen when they looted the central bank. The small-time rogues who were wearing the national attire have looted 18 billion rupees from wheat flour.
As we said earlier, we report, you decide.